Now we have two of the biggest of these partly rotten cedar logs that we're going to try to get some good rot-resistant lumber out of, which may sound like it makes no sense at all, but that's okay because that wouldn't be the first time I said something that sounded like it didn't make any sense. Almost. It's a chilly morning here, as was predicted by the folks at the Weather Service. We did get our first light frost this morning. If you're just now joining us, I salvaged these logs from an incense cedar tree that was down for a few years. All the sapwood is rotten or close to rotten, and we're trying to salvage as much good lumber as we can out of the rot-resistant heartwood. What's concerning about this one is this crack right here. This is the big end, and on the small end, another crack right here. I'm hoping that's just some shallow end checking because these logs were sitting out for a few days, and it's not a deep crack that could be a big problem. There could be a lot of stress in these logs because it was suspended up in the air, supported only by the stump and the top end of it. So it was kind of bowed down like this, suspended up above the ground. But one way to find out, and that is to cut into it and see what we can find. There's the first cut. The wood looks good, but we're getting a rough cut. Not too bad, but it's rougher than what it has been cutting. More important than that, I can feel I'm getting a wavy cut. The blade's cutting like this. The first thing I do if I'm getting a wavy cut is change the band. This one cut all the logs in the last video and the one before that, so it's due. Yeah, that's looking better. Yeah, that did it. That took care of it. Good flat cut. If it was still cutting wavy, the next thing I would do is check the band tension, then I'd check the drive belt tension. The tension of the drive belt can have a lot to do with the way it cuts. But it's cutting good now, so we'll leave it as it is. On behalf of the sun, I apologize for what could be some horrible lighting in the rest of this video. That low angle sun this time of year can be brutal for video, but we'll do the best we can. Here we have 4 100% heartwood 2x6 incense cedar. Tight grain, mostly small knots. The crack was just a shallow crack. Hopefully it stays that way as it dries. Also got a 2x8, a 1x8, a questionable 1x8. And when I trim, sorry guys, I'm going to say it. When I trim the flitch, I'll end up with a questionable 1x6. By questionable, I mean it has some sapwood wane in it, which could have some decay. Now, last but not least, obviously it's not least, because it's obviously the biggest one. If it seems like it might be the next morning, and it might be even frostier than it was yesterday, that's because it is. And if it seems like this loose bark on this log is making it harder to roll, that's because it is. And if it seems like the frost on this trailer is making it slick, that's because it is. If I could just get this debarking technique to work with all the logs. All the other logs from this tree were 8 feet long. This one is 10 feet. And the reason that I cut this one into 10 feet is, that's just the way it worked out. This butt log has more taper in it. Since it's longer, there's going to be more waste. It has a lot of heartwood on the butt end, but not so much on the top end. Because of that, we're going to lose some good heartwood. But I have an idea to try to recover some of that. But the problem with ideas is, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. And you never know when an idea is going to be the good one or the not. A lot of times, the only way to find out if they're good or not is to try them. I was going to cut these into 2x6s, but then when I got the cant squared, I decided I'll just make 2x12s. Because what's there not to like about 2x12s? Especially full dimension 2" by 12" 2" by 12" tight grained cedar with small knots. Except for that one. Here's the next one. Not bad for a tree that's been dead and on the ground for several years. All right, I got those all swept off and stacked up. I guess that's about it. Ah, flitch. Still got the flitches to do. Okay, let's get those knocked out real quick and then we can take a look at how much we got out of that whole tree. This stack is what we ended up getting out of that last log. The rest of this is what we got out of the rest of the tree. Not a huge amount of lumber for that size of a tree, but this is the prime heartwood. Over here is the amount of waste material I got from that tree. A lot of that's bark, but still there's more waste that came out of the tree than actual good lumber. But I already knew that was going to be the case. These slabs would make good firewood still, but I already have more firewood material around here than I could ever burn. And firewood's so cheap around here, I'm hardly motivated to try to sell it. It's not like over at the coast property where firewood prices are way high. If it wasn't so far, I'd haul it over there. I do have some possibilities of what I'm going to do with this. I'll have to decide on that. And as far as that idea I had for trying to recover some heartwood from the taper, well, the idea was I'd start my first cuts a little bit higher than I was on the other ones. Then I would cut some flitches below them, thinking the top end wouldn't have good heartwood, but I could cut it off and down below I'd have good heartwood in them. For example, one flitch might not have enough heartwood to get a 10-foot 1x6, but it might have enough to get an 8-foot or a 6-foot 1x6. But this one board is all that worked on. I could maybe get a 4-foot 1x8. The rest of it's junk. That didn't quite work out because the tapered heartwood didn't really happen until right at the butt swell. Throughout the rest of the log, it was fairly straight. Does that put that into the category of a not good idea? I think it puts it into the category of an idea that just didn't apply to this log the way I thought it would. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.